QR code over there. So.
Be cool. Or something that like a little bit more technology.
All right. Good afternoon, Swifties. Other people who happen to be here. Yeah. Our viewers online, hello. Thank you for joining us. My name is Hannah Martin. I'm a grad student here at WSU. I study sport management, so I've got the football part of today's panel. I also got my bachelor's here at WSU, and so I just loved it so much I came back. So I'm very happy and very honored to be moderating the discussion today, and I will let our other panelists introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Kara Hawkins-Jedlicka. I'm a scholarly assistant professor in the Edward R. Murrow College of Communications. I teach mostly public relations, and my area of study is sports communication, I think would be maybe the best terminology for it. I'm currently doing a lot of research on name, image, and likeness and self-branding from women's athletes. But I am a Swiftie. My students know, they have made memes about it. I grew up outside Nashville and used to play this high school played Taylor Swift's high school on a fairly regular basis for football. So I probably saw her before she was famous. I don't know if she went to football games. She was on the bleachers, so who knows?
Exactly.
But I will say I did not start out as a Swiftie because she was everywhere in Nashville, but I have slowly been won over.
I'm Billy Feather. I'm an associate professor in the School of Music. I teach group guitar. I'm designing the history of country music course, and I also teach film music history. My background is I have a degree in classical guitar. And then once I got that degree, I decided I'd had enough of the conservatory world. I wanted to go be in a band, and I went out for 10 years and played in a bunch of different bands and did a bunch of songwriting. And then 10 years later, I was like, I really miss academia. I went back to school for jazz guitar. And then eventually got my master's in classical guitar and guitar pedagogy. And my big favorite focus is songwriting. That's still my favorite thing ever since I was little. So I still do a lot of that for a lot of the bands that I'm in. So I'm in a couple different bands and I tour. Let's see what else. Did not start off as a Taylor Swift fan. I had a fantastic young student. She was 6 years old and she came in and all she wanted to learn was Taylor Swift songs. And I was like, okay. And this is around the time of Taylor Swift's first breakout album. And I went through all of Taylor Swift's material and was like, wow, this is really, I see how this connects to this young person and how devoted and excited this young person was to learning every song in the book. Even if she couldn't figure out the guitar chords, she would just kind of like mime them and figure them out. She was just so into it. So from there, I started seeing more about Taylor Swift, learning more about who she is and her business practices, and very quickly became a blonde Swiftie. So yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cassandra. I'm a second-year PhD student in the American Studies and Culture program at the School of Languages, Cultures, and Race. So a lot of my background, I got my master's in women's and gender studies, and now I'm getting my PhD here. But a lot of my work, I bring a women of color feminist perspective to everything that I do. My main work has to do with interrogating secondary education curriculums throughout the United States. But I'm from El Paso, Texas, and I'm a big Taylor Swift fan. I wouldn't necessarily call myself a Swiftie, but I have so many friends. I have best friends that are absolutely obsessed, so I cannot get away, right? But she's been such a big influence. I'm going to give away my age here a little bit, but I'm a big fan of Speak Now and Red. They definitely guided me through every terrible, terrible heartbreak that I thought I was going through, right? When I was in high school. So, yeah.
I'm
All right.
36, so I feel you.
What?
I'm 36, so
Okay.
I'm older than Taylor, so I feel
Okay.
We should say our favorite album.
I know, right? Oh, favorite album. Currently Midnights, but I also like Shake It Off. Or not Shake It Off.
I was like, are you on the panel for real?
1989, sorry.
Thank you.
I definitely love folklore, and especially the one where it's the Long Pond sessions where it's just her and the piano. It's just like, yeah.
Yeah, favorites have to be Red and Folklore up there. Absolutely.
Wonderful. My favorites are Folklore and Reputation, as you may have gathered from the snakes. And I don't mean to brag, but I have been here since the very beginning. I still have the physical copy of Debut. It's it broke, so it's in like two pieces, and often it just gets like flipped upside down. But that does have the homophobic version of Picture to Burn on it. So it's like a collector's item for me. So, all right. People watching are like, what? The what version?
Look it up.
Yes. All right. So our first question is going to deal with Taylor Swift, misogyny, the area of study that you're in. So because I'm in sports, I thought I would give a little segue through sports because of Taylor Swift's recent thorough and rapid integration into the National Football League, the NFL. And this has brought her main demographic, women 18 to 35, to the NFL. And historically, this is a group that the NFL has ignored. They have never marketed to this group because they're like, girls don't like football. And if they do market to women, it's like, well, here's a pink jersey. I hope you like it. Watch with your boyfriend, please. And so now the NFL doesn't really know what to do with all these additional eyes. They make their little jokes about women not being in sports and women being dumb and the bimbofication of the NFL. So I want to know, how has misogyny manifested itself in the wake of Swift's presence in your areas of study or expertise?
I'm just going to work off of yours because I do also do sport. So I will say, and I agree thoroughly with this, we know that about 47% of NFL fans are women, right? And a recent study said 60% of female NFL fans have actually been mansplained about football too, right? So I feel like we are seeing it really hardcore right now, mostly that women are dumb about sport. And the thing is that there are women sports fans. We know this. We have seen it with the rise of seeing sports on TV, actually having women's sports on TV, and them killing ratings and records. So a little bit of that misogyny, well, a lot of that misogyny has crept in. I will also say, though, that the Kelsey brothers are doing a great job on their podcast of being very kind and explaining football to people. And I think it's lovely. And I think a little bit of this is because the NFL has ignored us for so long. I don't know if anyone else has had the experience. I'm not really a big football person, but I remember very thoroughly in college sitting down to watch football and having people explain things to me in a way that I did not understand and being quite rude about it. And it seemed to be kind of the vibe from the NFL. So it feels a little mean lately that they're like, oh, hey, now we're going to explain it to you, but in the simplest terms possible. And we're going to make you feel kind of dumb about it and then talk about her relationships. I think that has really shown up currently. The other part of this, and I'll just do a two-parter here, is within the world of influencing and content creation. So we know there is, I'm sure you guys have fallen down Swift talk once or twice. There is a large group of people who are really creating content around Taylor Swift. And it's become kind of a joke that these people are a cult or they are really, too involved. Whereas we don't say the same thing about, we can say male football fans when they get really involved about trades. It's kind of the same idea and the same thought process. It is also interesting, too, that a lot of times they call them influencers instead of content creators. There's a very good book by Duffy that talks about aspirational labor when it comes to influencing, especially when it comes to women. Women tend to have to do more labor to get just as far as a man. If I was her man. And we tend to call men content creators over influencers as kind of influencing being a more derogatory term. So I think there's a little bit of both of those where we kind of see like, hey, this person's making content around something that is very specific and very much liked by women. So they can't actually be professional at it.
Yeah. I'll speak a little bit to this as a football fan. But I grew up learning football from my mom. So I guess I was a little lucky with that. But of course, right, misogyny manifests itself there, especially with what I've seen with Taylor Swift. I think that we need to recognize that it's very weird how much the NFL pushed its branding around just her and this relationship, right? They changed their like banners on Twitter or X or whatever, and their pictures and all of their captions on like TikTok have to do with Taylor, and they just really centered her to an audience that was going to or has also teared her down. I don't know if anyone has read those comments, but they are wild. Not surprising, but wild. But I'm also thinking about there's this girl on TikTok. I wish I knew her name, but she breaks football down for folks that don't necessarily understand it. And I think that's a cool thing that I'm seeing kind of maybe not come out of just this, but in general of appealing to an audience of women. And I'm seeing groups of women make like fantasy football teams. I think that is the funniest thing and the coolest thing to come out of this is like, you know what, we don't understand, but we want to learn and teach ourselves. And so we're going to create a fantasy football team together and figure it out all together and have fun at the same time. So yeah, those are kind of the things that I'm thinking about with it.
Who's in regards to like the NFL, like kind of more taking her on?
It could be the NFL. It could be your area of study.
Yeah, I would love
Oh,
to hear your
okay.
music opinion.
Well, I think first if we maybe bring it into like, so Taylor Swift is an NFL fan, but also Taylor Swift as the music creator and the business owner. And so I think like you said, where the very like group that shut her down for so long is now the group that they're trying to uplift her because she's here. And this seems to be a theme that's within Taylor's life. Very quickly in the music industry, and you all might know this, if you just look at any of the Billboard top 40s and you take a look at the racial profiling of those top 40s, just looking how many are men, how many are women, how many people of color are there, you really start to see a very stark difference, especially in country music. And again, you can do Billboard top 40 of the past 20 years that Taylor's been active, just to see maybe even when she started, like back in 2006, how many men were on the Billboard top 40? How many, people of color were on the top 40? And you'll just start to see that definitely women are marginalized over and over again in the music industry. This is not new. This, especially with history of country music, when women started off performing music, we were shunned. We were told we needed to get back into line, raise our families, and that it was the avenue of men who were going to be the music industry leaders. And as far as following Taylor Swift's life, I mean, down to her dad pushing her to do more and more things, he was kind of the capitalist one. It's clearly Taylor comes at it with a lot of authenticity. She was young. She was excited. I mean, she came from means. Clearly her parents allowed her to find places that she could be able to put her music out into the world. But time and time again, she goes up against misogynistic culture. They're like, oh, she's just the girl that sings songs about high school. Not thinking that's a thing that reaches over 50% of Americans because, wow, wait a second. It's not just some girl that sings about being in high school. How many, Americans, people in the world attend high school? How many people have these feelings within them? Taylor's singing to all of them. So it's a massive market that she was just kind of like, quote, a fluke at being successful at. So I think also as she was growing up, there's the misogynistic culture of it's not cool to talk about your female feelings. And early on, that was a big thing, especially coming through maybe like millennial culture. Is in the beginning, it was like, no, we learned how to control our feelings. We learned how to put them into a place. We learned how to be successful business people. We developed this very kind of masculine image of being very stoic versus really tapping into the wonderful resources that we have through our emotions and through just being female. There's all these beautiful things. So Taylor's going up against that too. And then again, throughout her culture, throughout her time period as an artist, she is just hit up again. And here she is with the NFL, one more misogynistic hit over and over again. But something that I really think is amazing about her is she doesn't let it stop her. Instead, she's like, no, I'm going to be myself. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to find a way to be different. And she says that when she's 13 years old and she's in Nashville going up against all these other singer-songwriters. She says, I've got to find a way to be different. And the way that I felt like she found a way to be different was digging down into her authentic self, which again is the most rarest thing we all have. We're all bringing to the table different experiences about who we are and different facets of our life. And our authenticity is time and time again the thing that sells in country music, and it sells in other music. It sells on social media. It's who are you on the inside. That's the rarest thing. And I think as Taylor goes through her life, it's not even now that she's fighting the mechanism of misogyny. She's just being her most authentic self, which I think is really cool. So I think, and again, in the comments that keep coming back to her, she's kind of developed, I mean, getting into the music industry at such a young age, at 13, you must develop a really thick skin. But she's also very open about the fact that she had an eating disorder, that she has self-image issues. These are all things that we as artists face every day whenever your face is on a Instagram, TikTok, anywhere. You just stare at yourself for long enough and you're like, wait, that's bad, and that's bad, and that's bad. Versus the culture of, wow, it's so cool that I have all these things that make me unique and fun. And I think that's part of the misogynistic culture that she grew up in too. It's like having to look at herself through the lens of wanting to be accepted and appreciated and a sex icon and someone that would sell records. So I really celebrate her now. I think she's starting to hopefully move past it and give us all a little bit of an ideal that we can just be our most authentic selves. And maybe that's her showing up at the football game. Is she showing up at the football game being her most authentic self? And it wasn't like NFL was like, yo, Taylor, we'll pay you X, Y, and Z to show up. She just did her thing. And over again, Taylor Swift doing her individual thing is what I think ends up being her success. Sorry,
I kind of want to, no, that's okay. I kind of want to add on to that a little bit, especially with her being at the games. They should literally be thanking her for the amount of views that these football games are getting. I think I read that, I don't know which game it was, because I'm not a fan of either of these teams. But anyway, yes. But I'm pretty sure that they got like double the viewing of what like a Super Bowl viewing would be, just because Taylor Swift was there. But I want to talk about this, like, kind of, at least when I was in high school and like a Taylor Swift fan by boys and guys around me, it's like, oh, you like Taylor Swift, you're such a girl, which is kind of that misogyny peeking through a little bit again. But I think now Swifties are unashamedly, unabashedly like Taylor Swift fans, right? And I think that that's a push against that too, or we can call it that.
Yes, a great segue into my next question. I'm going to call an audible, and I'm going to move some questions around.
Okay.
Use our football terms here. This on content for women. So in what has been called the wonderful girly summer by some, we saw Barbie breaking all sorts of box office numbers, while the Eras Tour and Beyonce's Renaissance Tour were and continue to smash records in live music. This really proves and illustrates what most of us have known for our entire careers. If you build it for them, women will come. Do you think that this is a sort of watershed moment for content made by women for women, and how important is that?
You needed to add the World Cup to that.
The World Cup.
The Women's World Cup this summer, or the World Cup. We don't need to clarify. I always feel like I have to go first because I'm first in line, and I love content. Hi, I'm a public relations professor. So my first thing is like, I really hope so. I really hope that we do understand this. I'm afraid we are taking the wrong messages. Barbie, we all know that Barbie was kind of, about feminism. It was at least feminism one-on-one on some level. We watched Ken, and I think Ryan Gosling probably deserved an Oscar for his performance. Yeah, push still makes me laugh. But what I think we're seeing is some people are taking the wrong message. Instead of saying, oh, we need more movies about women in the women's journey. So, when we're thinking about storytelling, a lot of times we have like a journey. It's a journey story or a hero's story. So think like Lord of the Rings, a bunch of dudes go and like throw a ring in a volcano, and it takes 3 books and a ton of time. Barbie really kind of positioned it more where in a woman's hero's journey, we tend to see it as not that like we're overcoming some great evil, we're like finding ourselves. And we do not see that really illustrated a lot in movies or stories, and that's typically the woman's hero's journey, that it was there all along, we just had to figure it out. So instead of like saying, oh, hey, let's make more stories about women, they say, hey, let's make a story about Polly Pocket. because because Barbie was popular, not that it was like content for women or by women. On top of that, we see oftentimes things get popular among women, and then we, for some reason, don't think women are a market. I'm not sure why we don't. 60% of all personal finances or all personal like wealth in the US is controlled by women. Women control 85% of consumer spending, and 92% of women, really are the ones who are trying to, do word of mouth, like pass deals to other friends. So they're kind of that really big point of like the two-step flow process in communications. I'm afraid we're going to not see it. I think it's a watershed moment, but I think we've had these watershed moments before, and it makes me nervous that we're taking the wrong lesson from it. I don't know if it's because we don't have women and enough or enlightened men in places of power to understand what's going on, or if they just kind of refuse to see us as a viable market.
I think when you said watershed moment, I agree with you, where I feel like we've had other watershed moments. And the thing that I will always say, we've been here all along. Like, women have been here all along. Like, we have been creating families. We have been, so it's kind of, to me, I'm almost like, so why are y'all putting a spotlight on these things right now? Why are these things selling? Because there are so many other moments and artists and artistic works that should be showcased. Why these? And I think a lot back to the music industry machine, where it's like, oh, Barbie's now selling, Taylor Swift's got a tour, let's push this. And now I don't mean to shine a light on it, but it is there. Barbie's white, Taylor Swift is white. Like, where's the watershed moment for the women of color? Where's the watershed moment for marginalized women? Where's the watershed moment for the LGBTQ plus community? Like, we all, like, different communities identify as female. So I think when it says watershed moment, part of my heart breaks, because then it's like all the work that's been done in feminism, while I'm so glad we're having these moments. And I think it's wonderful that we keep having, and important that we keep having these moments in history. It's also, hopefully, maybe then the media is still taking our attention and focusing on certain things. And so I hope, and that's something I think Taylor does try to do, is try to maybe even spread the wealth around a little bit, to be like, hey, the spotlight's on me, but I'm going to shine the spotlight on somebody else too. Let's make this like a catalysm moment and get everything kinetically energized together. So it's hard for me, because there's a part of me that's just like, why now, y'all? We've been here. But again, I celebrate any and all victories that females, like, that we have in the media and in the world.
So I think it is a watershed moment in that this summer has been full of celebrations for women and girls, right? It definitely was. We can't get away from that. And I think that kind of the watershed moment, I guess, or one of that we've had before is Beyonce's Renaissance tour and what she created for Black culture, Black queer folks, Black people, Black and brown people. But she made this safe space for those people. And I don't think that we can talk about the Eras tour without talking about the Renaissance tour. And we can talk about how, who was the one that was centered, right, in talking about this. And I think it was Taylor Swift, and that's just, well, I can't ignore that, right? And there's a reason why Taylor is centered through this and why Barbie is centered through this. I think that, I don't expect movies to touch on every single issue. Of course, I don't think movies can, but I think that Barbie was kind of the bare minimum, at least for me, right? And kind of for a lot of folks. And I think the way I look at it is, a lot of folks were uplifting America Ferrera's monologue, right, that she has in that movie, where she's talking to Barbie and kind of, so the way I see that a little bit is, right, this brown woman having to kind of do this labor and pick up the slack for this white Barbie to like, come on, you can do, like, yes, we are told all these things, but you can do it, you can get up. Not that it wasn't a great monologue, because it was, I think, and also that's a way that you can look at it. But I think we do have to contend with, I think Barbie was directed by somebody who is a white feminist, and so white feminism came through. And when it comes to Taylor Swift, I, applaud her for, she's gone through these moments like in the music industry, right? That she's been dragged down by men in the music industry, right? And she has overcome these things. But I like want her to do more, if that makes sense. But also, I think about how should we have these expectations on celebrities? I think that it also creates these kind of unhealthy parasocial relationships that we can have with celebrities. I mean, I think we all have one with some kind of celebrity, right? I'm not immune to that. And yeah, I hope that answered.
Yes,
I kind of went
yes,
on a little
wonderful.
rant.
No,
Yeah.
and I'll say, like, I know the questions that we're about to answer, but it really does hit on, we had another question. And Hannah, why don't you just throw that question up there?
Perfect.
Sorry.
It's lining up perfectly. So this question is about white feminism. Swift has been criticized in the past for being a white feminist. This can be seen in some of her, what some say is selective allyship. So how do we balance, we've already kind of get into this topic, how do we balance recognizing and celebrating Swift's success as a woman, but also acknowledge that part of that has to do with race?
So I think that that's what you have to do, is balance that, right? What I mean by that I kind of want her to do more is this selective allyship that she seems to have. I kind of never really know where she stands. Like if I think really hard about it, and she only kind of comes out of the woodwork right when it's time to vote. And then like, that's it. That's what we get, right? The gist of, vote, we all need to vote. Yes, absolutely. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't remember her, really taking a clear stance on everything that happened in 2020 with Black Lives Matter. And I know a lot of folks did. And again, I questioned these expectations that I kind of put on celebrities, right? But I just, throughout her career, I think that she's always been kind of like, yes, but no, not too much. I won't give you too much there. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that. I also always feel weird answering questions like this because, hi, I'm a blonde white girl, if you can't tell. I appreciate what you're saying because I do think there is a little bit, I don't see it as performative, but I don't know where her line is, right? It's not like, was it Kendall or Kylie or whoever with the Pepsi ad that was so bad? Like, it's not that bad. It's not like putting a black square up on her Instagram and like supposedly doing this, but then not doing anything. Personally, when I'm trying to balance these things and understanding my own privilege, I try to make sure I'm using that privilege in a way to speak for voices that aren't there. So if we're all sitting at like a meeting and there's some question that like I can pretty much say like, oh, other people in here who might not have as much privilege as me would like the answer to this, I'm going to ask it, right? And I wonder when we're thinking about Taylor, how we kind of center that, right? Like, where is she growing in this pathway and where is she going? I will say I do kind of appreciate her at least getting all her Swifties to register to vote, because she did like have a kind of a huge amount of people register to vote just from an Instagram post. And if that kind of is what it takes to flip some states, I shouldn't say that too loudly, but like I'm perfectly fine with that. But I do think there is kind of that recognition of like, no, there's other voices in the room that need to be uplifted. And having that relationship with a celebrity is kind of hard because you want them to say it too.
Yeah.
But how do you balance that? And I think that's always something you're going to grapple with.
Yeah. I have at times called her kind of like this beacon of white feminism because that's just what she represents to me. And I think of her crowd, her outreach, Not to say, right, that Black and brown folks don't enjoy Taylor Swift, obviously. But yeah, she's just, I don't know. That's what I hold, is that I am a fan, but also I recognize that she sometimes doesn't give me enough, I guess.
And I think some in this day and age too, it's like we're moving towards celebrities having stronger viewpoints and seeing that their fan bases, I don't know, like accept, or at least it feels that way to me. Like it's less of, especially in the music industry, there's a lot of discussion amongst fans to never be political. Like don't go on your social media, don't take a stance, don't be political, do it on your private channels, don't do it on your band's channel. There's a part of me that wonders if maybe that's Taylor's PR marketing being there. But I'm with you. I do wish maybe we would hear a little bit more about where she stands in the spirit of authenticity. And I also think in the spirit of inspiring others to speak more and to be allies. She does outwardly express her allyship towards the like LGBTQ community, but she doesn't go much further, which I think is, as you said, a great first step. I wish too there was more. As far as white feminism goes, it's tricky. I help run a feminism festival. It's a music festival in North Carolina. Our board of directors are predominantly white. And I think that's something where we talk about it a lot. We debate it. We ask how we can bring in other communities. And I went to an HBCU in North Carolina, and I often turn to my friends from the HBCU, and I'm like, how can I get people to respond to my emails? How do I bring people of color and marginalized communities into these arenas, into my feminist festival? And one of the responses I got is like, well, you're all a bunch of white women. And I was like, fair game. How do we? And so it's a lot of like learning how to bring in other communities. And I wonder if Taylor's on her journey to trying to figure out how to do that. Because I know even as being a white feminist, it's hard to go out into communities where perhaps you might not be the voice. You might not be one that's welcome. You know, whenever I enter into a room of different kinds of feminists, I am called out, which I respect. And I also think that I've had the privilege of white women have had years of feministic development and privilege to be able to have maybe a stronger voice, but now is the arena and the time to say, cool, we've been given this privilege to open up the floodgates to everyone else. So I do wish Taylor would open it up a little more. I think the post that she recently put up about Beyonce, there's her and Beyonce like locking arms, and she's like, oh, my mentor. And I was like, cool, we're getting somewhere. Like, and so I think we can all, as white feminists, strive to do more. But then also realizing that like we need to reach out to those communities that already have leaders, that already have feminist leaders in different communities, and start the conversation to be like, how can we help each other? How can we both uplift each other and push, you know, our big agenda, which is uplifting women?
I think to speak to this Beyonce, Taylor Swift, I think it was very interesting that people were kind of doing this Beyonce versus Taylor Swift thing. I don't think that they're, you know, that you shouldn't pit women against each other. Sure, yes. And I don't think that there's anything to pit against. I think that they are two completely different artists on two completely different trajectories for pretty much two completely different audiences. And my opinion is like, I don't know, this versus would kind of be over if you just handed them a mic. But if I think that I would like to think that Beyonce and Taylor kind of know are listening to all of this talk, and so Beyonce showing up for Taylor at her movie premiere, was this like, everybody shut up, like stop talking. Like and if we think back in like pop culture history, when the infamous Kanye West incident happened, it was because it was Taylor Swift songs, right? That's what he said. And then who brought her out later and gave her the space to talk and actually accept her award? Beyonce. So she's kind of always been there and given this person this space. And I don't know how friendly they are, but I mean, I know that Beyonce's gone to like Taylor Swift's birthday parties, and Taylor Swift has gone to Beyonce's
I would
birthday
like
parties.
to think.
So I
gonna
think there's
say
like a
this.
relationship
I
there.
would like to think that they are like both because they're just rich and fabulous looking women and famous that they like have phone calls every once in a while or just like text exchange. They're just like,
Maybe.
hey, how's it being famous? How's your life? Isn't it hard? Here. And they like have weird text message conversations with each other. I don't think that really happens, but I would love to imagine it.
I hope so. I hope they're just like, hey, like saw that your tour bus broke down. How did you handle that? Because mine did the same thing. Or like, how do you pack to go on tour?
Yeah.
Like, I just I want to see those conversations. Or even like, I don't know, like what wine do we take on tour?
I would
Or,
highly recommend wearing these 2 pairs of tights that make your legs look a certain way that I found out on TikTok.
yeah,
and like
kind
they
of-
talk back and forth like that.
To comment on this, like solidarity-ish, I guess, is I was reading a New York Times article, and they were kind of reviewing their. The reporter was reviewing like the atmosphere at a New York City Renaissance concert, and they were talking to people on the train, and the Renaissance fans were like, "Oh, we looked up how the Eras Tour Swifties like found the shortest route." Or like which subway to take. And I was like, that's kind of cool, right? Like they can kind of like go off of each other of, you know, this huge moment for both of them.
I think it's also cool that like 2 of the biggest selling artists right now are both women. Like Beyonce's crushing it. And so I think that we're also at this, maybe this is the watershed moment. It's like, there are these 2 strong, powerful women that are making music and owning their empires. I think it's so exciting.
One last
No,
thing.
go for it.
Go.
I don't know. I've been thinking about this. I don't have an answer or anything, but I've been thinking about how like, how can we expect anything less anymore from like other artists? And I'm also thinking of like these mediocre men that do their little concert tours, and specifically I'm talking about Drake because I'm unfortunate.
Oh, I thought you were talking about John Mayer. I'm like, we could go on, but like I have people who are like, I went to a John Mayer concert. I'm like, why?
But I'm speaking about Drake specifically because I'm a fan, unfortunately. But we all have our people, right? And he's kind of is going on this Eras tour with his music. And from what I've seen and read and have paid attention to, it's just like boring. I've heard that he takes long breaks of like just talking for like 10, 15 minutes, or it's silent and he tells the crowd to kind of like dance it out for a little bit. What? Why are you doing that? I want to hear you sing. And so I also heard that because he was kind of going through his discography, it was between like minute to 2 minute kind of remixes of these songs. When we have, you know, Beyonce and Taylor Swift singing for 3+ hours, full versions of their music. So I'm just kind of like, wow, my expectations are super high for all of you now. So I don't know, take a lesson or 2.
I also wonder, this is unrelated, but watching both, like knowing how long both their concerts are and being a distance runner, I just really want to know what nutrition they're taking while they're doing this, because it seems like such a workout and I would be starving.
It's a huge, I mean, if you've ever taken singing lessons, I mean, it is a full body experience. And then I watched them both, like they are up there dancing with their team and they're really singing and they're really playing their instruments. Like, so I think a lot about like their athletic health. They've got to be.
Yeah.
I mean, so not only are they like owning their empire, not only they're writing songs, not only are they managing these stage shows, not only are they singing, but they have to keep themselves up too. Like it's such a massive demand. But I think a lot of actually what you said about raising the bar a little bit. I think that's like my music students. I'm just like, we've got to work harder, y'all. Like, I mean, I want, of course I want everybody to play music, but when someone chooses the path of music, I'm like, our high bar is Taylor Swift, Beyonce, like they are doing complex musical stuff. Like, I mean, especially Beyonce, I would say I feel like Beyonce's looking at it from just a music theory point. Beyonce is doing so much cool stuff in the land of music theory, pushing boundaries of music things. Tailors might not be pushing the boundaries as much, but the professionalism, the musicianship, the way they work hard on their craft. I tell my students, I'm like, it's a lot like sports. Work hard at your craft, work hard every day, because I promise you there's going to be somebody else that's going to pick up the slack and come right past you. So I don't know, it's interesting.
I know. I just think about
Yes. No, I immediately thought of the Jonas Brothers, who are also doing their little free hour tour.
Yeah.
And
that's
they-
a whole nother thing.
They're taking their whole breaks, and immediately I was like, Joe Jonas, whose biggest problem is that his wife is too hot and successful.
Right.
It's like, okay, Joe, give her my number and I'll take care of that problem. No problem. Do we have questions from the audience? Not online. Nobody has a question online for us? Do we have audience member questions? No? Okay. I have one more question, but I would love to hear if you folks are thinking anything. This is just like teaching. It's like, who has a question for me? Okay, I will ask my last question then. We'll go for it. This is about, so the now infamous Ticketmaster headed rollout of Swift's Eras Tour tickets has been referred to as Taylor's capitalistic circus, where the Eras Tour is not just a tour, it's a show with 2-hour-long lines to purchase merchandise, special deluxe packages, and myriad different editions of her Midnights and 1989 Taylor's Versions albums, a movie about the tour, more merchandise, a popcorn and soda cup that moviegoers for some reason thought you had to return at the end of the showing.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Yes. They're like, do you want my popcorn bucket back? No. Take that home with you.
I took mine.
It's like, when have they ever asked you for your popcorn bucket back at the movie theater? So how do we encourage women to be successful without becoming just another cog in the billionaire capitalist machine?
I'll take a little.
Yeah, you go first. I think this might be a little bit
I
up
don't-
your area, up your route.
I don't think that you can. We're all part of this capitalist system, right? We're all kind of rolling around in it forever, always, until something massively different changes and happens, right? And I do think that Taylor is the ultimate capitalist Barbie. I obviously fall for it too, right? I'm wearing a Speak Now cardigan. I went there.
I spent $9 on this.
You know, yeah, like I went to the movie this past weekend, right? So I think it's crazy with all these these different 1989 versions, different colors, different CDs. Get the CDs that you can display on your walls, and also all the different colors of the Midnights, and also there's and people want to collect it all, right? And they're going to, and I mean, this girl is making money and she's capitalizing off of all of you, it's just, and off of me, so yeah, that's my.
So I pondered this question for a long time. I got the questions early and I needed to, this question really threw me for a loop. Hi, I do public relations, so it's hard for me not to think about being part of capitalism. We are trying to promote good works for free, often trying to get earned media. But a couple of thoughts. First thought, I keep running as fast as I can. Would I have to run as fast if I was a man? Do we ask these questions about men?
Right.
Do we care what Bezos is doing and how much money he has? And should we, try to be like lecturing men about how to be successful without being capitalistic? No, we don't. The other thought is, how do we define success? Are we thinking about success in terms of men's success? We do this a lot with sport, that we think that women's sport has to be exactly like men's sport, and we don't appreciate the game for what it is. I frankly like to watch women's soccer way more than men's soccer. There's less flopping, and I think it's a little bit more strategic. The same thing, women's basketball, yeah, they don't dunk as much, but it's just as entertaining. So I think we maybe need to think about how we define success and how we define success as a woman when we're thinking about encouragement. Last thing, and this is a little bit further out there maybe, what is success in a system that is not built for women and is maybe a system of oppression? Can we actually define success in any way within a system of oppression? And even if we're trying to think about, yes, Taylor Swift is obviously successful. She is making money. But is this system really working for her? I don't know. She's getting, is she happy? I don't know. She went through eating disorders. She's gone through the paparazzi hounding her. She's had to go underground because of rumors. Yeah, she might be successful some places, but she might not be successful other places. And we have to think about that in kind of a system that is not maybe meant or built for, I don't know, any human. I shouldn't be so anti-capitalist. But we have to kind of think of it in that route too.
Actually, feeding off of that, I've been thinking a lot about how, like you said, is this system even built for any human? So what happens as a music teacher, and especially as a songwriting teacher and a woman that plays guitar, I get a lot of students that come in, and a lot of them have very big dreams. And they're like, hey, I want to be a singer-songwriter. I want to be famous. I want to play big stadium shows like Taylor Swift. And I hear them, and they have fantastic talent in all of these different avenues, all very wonderful people that are just beautiful, fantastic, bright-eyed, young, brilliant human beings. And each time one of them comes up to me and says they want to be a professional musician, my heart breaks a little. But then I think that I now have a responsibility where if we are going to be cogs within the machine, the best thing we can do is arm ourselves with knowledge. When we go into the machine, we need to know that when Taylor Swift was young, she walked in there and she didn't know what she was up against. She was 13 years old. When she's going in front of these industry executives, mostly men, mostly older men, she was looked at a certain viewpoint. She didn't know. She was bright-eyed. She just saw a Faith Hill documentary, and that was what was I want to do that. And totally didn't quite, I'm sure at that age, know what she was getting into. I'm not sure her parents did either. And she was completely chewed up and used by a machine. But she came out victorious because she had other strong mentors, Beyonce, other people to kind of have her back when she was older. So now I think as a musician going into the cog of the industry, which right now it's still an industry, even if you make it on TikTok, even if you make it on YouTube, even if you become an influencer, it's an industry. They're going to use you. They want to sell your image, your art, and everything to make money. That's the idea, and it's an industry. So what you can do is go okay, cool. How can I make the industry work for me? How can I go into this industry as a healthy person? How can I maintain my mental sanity? Can I find strong female mentors that have already done this, that are being successful, that look like they're taking care of themselves? How do we use history and the tales of Dolly Parton and Loretta Lynn and all these other very famous people that come through and be how did they survive being cogs in these machines and come out as okay, wonderful humans? We've got to find your tribe, find your people. And so I think arming yourself with knowledge as to how the machine works, knowing how to put your art within the machine, know how to be your own business person, know how to financially take care of yourself, know how to legally take care of yourself. And there's a wonderful world out there of especially women that want to help other women because we were marginalized for so long in this industry. To be no, we want to help each other out. We want to make sure that we take care of our own. So again, I think once you the way you work in the music industry while still being a cog in the industry is being aware of how the industry is manipulating you, having strong people around you to offer sage and good advice, and also just using analytics. Be okay, cool. If I have there's 7 successful women, what are the places that they all did the right thing? Or what is one thing that was successful for them? Making sure they took time for themselves. Making sure they brought, in Dolly Parton, the best friend went on the road with Dolly. There was a little bit of human element there. So I think that's, just learning how to arm yourself against the machine and then how to use it for your own, capitalistic ideas.
Okay. What about now? We have a question from the audience online. Yes, we'll bring it down. You don't just want to shout it at me and then I'll repeat it?
Ben's no, I need a mic.
Are there any recommendations on how we can use the events of this summer to better teach about gender and gender stereotypes? Beyonce, Taylor Swift, Barbie, etc. Ideas on how to further these conversations. That's from Brittany Needham.
Oh, hello, Brittany. Brittany's my bestie. She goes to Baylor. She's very smart. She's also a sports girly. Thank you, Brittany. Do we have an answer for Brittany?
I think my students will probably know that we talk about Taylor a lot in my class. So I think a lot of it is bringing current events into the classroom. I think after class, I think I'd actually dismissed class. We had a good 15-minute conversation about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce and if it was a PR relationship or not, right? So these are things that we can have these discussions around and also understand the intersectionality and the power dynamics and bringing that in too. I joke that, and I think we're all faculty up here, but I always joke that like I feel like the lovely monologue from the Barbie movie from Gloria needs to be played for everybody who's about to like look at my tenure and promotion packet or my promotion packet, just because I feel like it needs to be said. But I think just using and understanding kind of where your current events happen within where you are with this watershed moment and really having that conversation in class and not being afraid to have a conversation about intersectionality. I know in my personal branding class, we've been kind of talking about intersectionality when it comes to branding yourself. And I don't know if it was the first time that people have seen the Wheel of Power, but like we brought it into class to talk about it and kind of understand it.
So I teach Race and Racism 101 here at WSU, and I mean that's how I can think of it, is just bringing in current events, right, to what you're teaching, and having conversations of race and gender when it comes to Barbie and Beyonce and Taylor Swift, right, and holding that and go. I think that also current events, what I find is been helpful for students to talk more, right, to not be too scared to say something. So they're like, oh, I like Taylor Swift, or oh, I listened to Beyonce. I watched the Barbie movie, and we can all say that we loved it and we enjoyed it, right? And then we can also critique it, because that's okay. And I think that sometimes it may feel, at least I see for students with that too, is like maybe I shouldn't, or like there's not a space for me to do that. So yeah.
And with that, you all both said it so eloquently, it is bringing it into the classroom. And I think that's us as teachers realizing that we do have a privilege as teachers, which is that we're leading the conversation sometimes. I encourage all my students, especially with music, I'm like, please bring in the songs that you love. Please bring in the songs that mean something to you. Let's share them with the class. Let's be open and vulnerable. I think also, as someone that's very big into activism, I encourage my students to go out into their communities to find other like things that they really believe strongly in, and to start to have these conversations within the community, join different help groups, see where your feminism can be active in your local community. Because I still believe that the biggest groundwork is still in every community. Like that's where you're going to make the most fundamental change. Is you might not be able to change, let's say, certain demographics, but you can most certainly help influence the decisions of a younger generation that are eager to have wonderful role models that have been down the path before. And so then after you go out and do your activism in the community, coming back into the classroom and say, what did you learn? What did you come up against? What did you see? Because what somebody comes up against in Pullman is going to be different than what somebody comes up against in Chicago, versus different what somebody comes up against in Texas. So it's a lot of being like, let's pull together our brain trust and see what we're all running into.
Wonderful. Anything else for us, Ben? No? Okay. Well, we are like right at time. So I think we're going to wrap up. Any last thoughts from our wonderful panel?
No.
This has been so fun.
Giving us
Yes.
the space to, hash out the important stuff about Taylor Swift.
Yes, I have really enjoyed listening to you all, and I hope everybody here has as well. Thank you for being with us tonight. And Dave is going to give you some information on how to get your credit for being at tonight's event.
Thanks. We just want you to, those of you who are registered for this on GivePulse, if you want us to have the CCE track your hours, take a selfie and submit that with your impact. Thanks again to our moderator and panelists. We'll see you all later.
I love that they take selfies. That's amazing.
Yes.